Notice with me verse 3. Hebrews 13:3. Remember them that are in bonds, as bound with them, and them which suffer adversity, as being yourselves also in the body. Really, the essence of these two principles that he's saying to do all boils down to the idea that you should put yourself in other shoes. Isn't that the essence of the golden rule? In Luke chapter 6, verse 31, he says, as you would that men should do to you, do ye also to them. Now the golden rule is not, I like this, so I'm going to make you like this. It's not, I'm this way, so I want you to be like me. It's the other way around. To love them as you would have them love you, put yourself in their shoes. That's the whole point. And in this Hebrews passage, remember them that are in bonds as bound with them. Now, recognize this, that if you've never been in bonds, there's an aspect here that until you are in someone's shoes, you can't really and you can't fully understand until you have been there. So I get that. But he's telling you to try. He's telling you to feel as best as you can in your limited way what they're feeling. Try to understand from their perspective. Imagine you were in jail. When you're thinking, I suppose at that time you had, even the Hebrew writer himself talks about how you had compassion of me in my bonds. So he's telling them, you did have compassion on me, but he's encouraging this attitude to continue. If a person had been persecuted for his faith, let's suppose he preached the gospel and now he's in jail. Maybe you've never been in jail, you don't know what that feels like, so try to imagine what you would feel like. What would it be like to lose your freedom? What would it be like to be shut in? Missing opportunities, missing things with people, longing to do things that you wanted to do, that you used to do. So thinking about things like that, trying to put yourself where they are. Also those who suffer adversity. You know, different people go through different things. Now, there are times where we kind of tell ourselves, why does this person act this way during this difficulty? Why are they acting like that? If I was in that, I wouldn't do that. I would do this, I would do that. It's kind of hard to tell somebody else how to do that if you are not there. It's kind of hard to tell somebody else how to grieve. It's hard to tell somebody else how to feel if you're not there. You're not in their body. But he is telling you to try. Have compassion. Do your best to think and imagine what they feel like. What kind of difficulty they have. That's a biblical principle. So biblical that in Romans chapter 12 he gives this same idea. Look at Romans 12. And this was alluded to more than once. Several of you have mentioned this idea, whether in song or in the words at the table or in the announcements. This idea is present. Romans 12. Notice with me in verse 15. Rejoice with them that do rejoice, and weep with them that weep. Here's the thing. When you have a variety of people, different homes, different situations, different ages, different health issues, different struggles, different job situations, different life decisions, different milestones that you're at. Well, there's going to be a variety of needs. Some people are going to be on a high note, enjoying great things. That life may be good for them right now. Well, what do you want to do? Rejoice with them. If we practice this golden rule, this idea, and isn't this the idea of the golden rule here? Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Isn't that the point? Is to put yourself where they are. Now, sometimes I think we have a difficulty with this. Perhaps someone has enjoyed some privilege, some blessing in their life, and maybe we have never felt that, so there might be a tendency for us to be jealous if we're not experiencing that and we want that. But if we practice the golden rule, we'll not have any problem with the jealousy issue. I really believe that's true. There ought not be any jealousy among us. If I love you and you're enjoying something I wish I had, well, I don't want to take that from you. Isn't that a selfish mentality to be jealous? You're receiving something and I'm wanting to take it from you. That ought to be mine. That's what I'm doing whenever I'm jealous. Why does he get that and I don't? Why does she get that and I don't? Well, I don't want to rob that joy. I ought to be happy for you. Be thankful that you have that. Better you than me. That's the idea of loving others as you would want them to love you. Now, he's not saying love others as they love you. Surely we get that. It's not saying, oh, I would love you if you loved me back. It's not saying, I would treat you this way if I could only get the same in return. That's, how much does it help us, though, whenever we give and we think of the other person in their circumstance? Maybe if we are enjoying something, stop and think, how many people would love to have what I have? Maybe the next time I'm tempted to complain about something I have. Maybe if I could just stop and say, how many people would love to be where I'm at? So these are all principles that I should try to do. Even if I think, I don't like the way this person's responding in this circumstance, it would help me to apply this principle. As you would. Look at 1 Corinthians chapter 12. 1 Corinthians 12, verse 26. Here he's talking about not having any division, but that we should care, we should have the same care. We're all connected in the Lord's body. We're a part of the same unit. We should stop calling the brethren as they and them, and stop thinking of the church as those people, as if separated from me. I need to think of you as a part of me. We are connected and together. In 1 Corinthians 12, in verse 26, and whether one member suffer, all the members suffer with it. Or one member be honored, all the members rejoice with it. There are good things that are happening among us. We want to all appreciate that and enjoy that together, as we just sang. But sometimes there are those who are really having a hard time for whatever reason, for various reasons. And we need to be mindful of them as well. Brothers and sisters in Ukraine or Russia. Can you imagine? Can you imagine what it would be like? So there ought to be something within us that has some compassion, that we pray for them. maybe feel compelled to do something, whatever limited capacity we have. We may not be always able to know the right thing to say. We may not always know the right thing to do, but we can try. We can try to do something. But I really think this is, whenever we have tension among us, and we will in a family, but if we could apply this principle of thinking, what would I want others to do for me in this situation? That would be a good way to guide us. Isn't this what he tells us to do in the home? 1 Peter chapter 3. What does Peter tell men to do towards their wives? In 1 Peter chapter 3. Notice in verse 8. Verse 7. Likewise, ye husbands, dwell within, according to knowledge. What he's saying here is in an understanding way. Be considerate. That's his point. Okay, I'm not a woman. I don't know what that feels like. I don't think the way my wife thinks. I don't feel the way my wife feels. I may not always understand everything about that, but I can still be understanding. I can still be considerate and try to recognize, to put myself in her shoes as best I can. He says, giving honor unto the wife as unto the weaker vessel, as being heirs together the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered. It's not a belittling thing at all. This is more of an honor that he's saying. To treasure and value her in the different ways and appreciate the way God made her. Aren't you glad men and women are different? It's beautiful that way. And so I need to have that kind of understanding. On the flip side, a wife needs to do the same to her husband. Let me give you an example of one who did not do so well at that. Look at 2 Samuel in chapter 6. 2 Samuel chapter 6. Look at this example. Set the stage of what's going on. David wants to bring the ark of God back. The ark of God represented the presence of God. The foreign nation had taken the ark. David cared about the things of God. He wanted that to be brought back to its proper place because he loved God. Well, in his effort to do that, he didn't do it right at first. What ends up happening is they put the ark on an ox cart, which was not what God had commanded. I guess that's our human reasoning sometimes. We want to try to do an easier thing than what God had said, try to find another way. Maybe it seemed more convenient, put it on this ox cart, bring it back, just work smart, not hard. But yet God had said, put it on poles, and only certain ones were allowed to carry this, and other people don't go near it. But they needed to regard God's instructions. They did not. What happens is Uzzah, who was not, he did not have the permission to even be near the ark. The oxen that was pulling the ox cart, they stumbled. So he reaches to grab the ark to steady it, and God strikes him dead. And David is afraid of God that day for good reason. Imagine one of your servants, one of your people, in your instructions to bring this back, someone dies as a result. So try to put yourself in David's shoes now. Imagine how the responsibility you're feeling at that point. Imagine what you're going to feel like, that here is someone that you knew who lost their life because of the way that this was done. So David wants to make really sure now. He doesn't totally give up, But he waits for the right instruction to make sure we're going to do this correctly now. We're going to bring this ark back, and we're going to do it in a way that God is pleased. When he does, here's what happens. Look at the joy that David has now that the ark has come back. Verse 14 of 2 Samuel 6. Put yourself in David's shoes now. Imagine you're feeling the way David is feeling. This has been a long time coming. The ark's been away for a long time. It's finally coming home. And David danced before the Lord with all his might, and David was girded with a linen ephod. Now, just to understand, usually kings would dress in some kind of a royal garb. But he's dressing more like a common person. Why is he doing that? And he's celebrating. He is happy. This is a great moment. The ark of God has finally come back. You want to know why? Because that represents the presence of God. We have God's blessing back where it belongs. Verse 15. So David and all the house of Israel brought up the ark of the Lord with shouting, with the sound of the trumpet. And as the ark of the Lord came into the city of David, Michal, Saul's daughter, looked through a window and saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord. And she said, look how happy my husband is that he has pleased the Lord. Look at his servant's heart. Look at his humility. Look at how he is so thankful that he's brought the ark back. I am so thankful my husband cares about the things of God. I'm thankful that he does not lift himself up above the common people. I'm thankful that he understands and he knows his proper place. That's not what she's doing. What she does at this moment is very selfish. She's thinking about herself. She's thinking, I'm embarrassed that my husband is acting this way. So she despises him in her heart. Verse 17. Now flip it back over to David. Imagine what David is thinking. At this point, David hasn't talked to his wife yet. But look at what David is feeling and doing before everybody else. Verse 17. They brought in the ark of the Lord and set it in his place in the midst of the tabernacle that David had pitched for it. And David offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. David's spending money. He is spending time. He's putting energy. In verse 18, and as soon as David had made an end of offering burnt offerings and peace offerings, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord of hosts. And he dealt among all the people, even among the whole multitude of Israel, as well to the women as men. To everyone a cake of bread, and a good piece of flesh, and a flagon of wine. So all the people departed, everyone to his house. David is so happy. He's giving valuable gifts away. Now, where do you think he would expect to receive this kind of joy? Where would he need it the most? But in his own house. That's not what he received. So he goes home, verse 20. Then David returned to bless his household. He does not get the same response. And Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet David and said, how glorious was the king of Israel today, who uncovered himself today in the eyes of the handmaids of his servants, as one of the vain fellows shamelessly uncovereth himself. Now really, uncovered, he was dressed. He wore a ephod. He was dressed. He wasn't naked, but that's kind of the way she viewed it. She viewed it as he's dressing like one of the regular people. He's dressed like a commoner. Now, maybe she was, you got to remember, she's Saul's daughter. She's raised as royalty. She's probably taught to carry upon that image of dignity. You got to play the part if you're going to be a king's daughter. I suppose that may be on her mind, maybe. But she is now embarrassed of David because of the way he's acting. It's almost like she doesn't like being associated with him. And so she's really throwing water on his fire. Talking about David's zeal here and being a person to really dampen that zeal that he has. That's what she does. And she says, notice verse 21, what David responds with. David said unto Michal, it was before the Lord, which chose me before thy father, and before all his house, to appoint me ruler over the people of the Lord, over Israel. Therefore will I play before the Lord. Do you feel David's hurt here, that he doesn't get the respect that he wished that he had from his wife? Verse 22, I will yet be more vile than thus, and will be base in mine own sight. He's really what he's saying is, you're ashamed that I humbled myself and dressed normally. But he's saying, I'm going to even do it more. Do you see what her actions did and her response did? Made him. It didn't help her cause. First off, the way she does him, it doesn't make him want to come her direction. Because she doesn't really understand him. Now he says, I'm going to be more humble. And then he says, and of the maidservants which thou hast spoken of them shall I be had in honor. What he's saying is, they're going to respect me. As if to say, that's what I wanted from you. And then verse 23, therefore Michal the daughter of Saul had no child unto the day of her death. I think all of that whole scene could have been prevented if she could have applied the principle, put herself in his shoes. She would have tried to feel what he's feeling, rejoice with him, rather than despise him in her heart because she doesn't like the way he's dressed, she doesn't like the way he's acting. That's not what she would like for him to do, so therefore, that's what she does. What better example do we have of putting ourselves in others' shoes than the Lord himself? And you really think about it. He was mindful of us already. One in the Old Testament said, Lord, you know our frame. I believe before the Lord came to the earth that he already knew our situation, which is why he did it. I believe he already knew our struggles. He already knew our temptations. He's the one that made us. He knows what it's like to be tempted. I don't think he had to come to the earth in order to understand that, but he did. And we're told that he was tempted in all points like as we are, yet without sin. He has walked in our shoes. Nobody can say, no one understands me. Now you might could say that about people, but you can't say that about God. It might be true that somebody else doesn't know what you're going through, but God does. 1 Peter 5:7 says, cast your care upon the Lord, for he cares for you. He knows. I may not know. Even in my eager attempt, I may be trying and still fail to not really know what everybody here feels. But the Lord knows. And he did. He walked among us. He walked. He came to his own, and his own received him not. The Word became flesh. He knows what it feels like to be cold, to be hot. He knows what it feels like to be hungry, to be betrayed by your own. He knows what it feels like to be left alone. He knows what it feels like to when you needed support, when he was in the garden and wished that they would pray for him and be there with him and for him, and they weren't. He knows what it feels like to be neglected. He knows all those things. He knows what it feels like to be single. He knows what it feels like to lose loved ones. He knows what it feels like to be betrayed by his own close friend. I mean, there's not a circumstance that any of us have. You can say, nobody gets me. That might be true among us, but not among Jesus. Our Father does know. He does understand. Now we're taught to try your best. Put yourself in other shoes. Try to imagine if I were them. Jonah, when he went to preach to the people in Nineveh, and yet he reacted the way he did. Why did God say, these people don't know their right from their left? What was the point when God said that? Wasn't he saying, try to put yourself in their shoes, Jonah. Try to imagine for a moment. You've been taught, you're a prophet. They don't have the law of God like you have. When we go to correct someone, Galatians 6 says, go in a spirit of meekness, remembering yourself, lest you're also tempted. What is the point of that? Put yourself in their shoes. We might be tempted to say, oh, I would never do that. I would never. Well, don't say that. Now, maybe you don't struggle with the sin that they have struggled with, but maybe you have something else. Maybe they're thinking that about you. You got to think about that and be humble. Now, there is a time to go to others, but there's a way to do it. I think that's the point of being merciful. That's a point of trying to be understanding. You know, that comes across a whole lot better when you do that. I think people can appreciate your effort to restore them more when they know you're coming to them as an equal who also has struggled and so forth. And maybe this morning you've struggled with something and you want to come to the front and you want us to pray with you. You want us to help you with that. I really don't think, if I know the brethren here, that we're going to say and do something in a way to make you feel worse. No, we want to help you, whatever your struggle is. If you have not yet obeyed the gospel, we would like you to be one of us. We would like you to be part of the family. And I don't think we're going to be like that older brother in the story of the prodigal son. I do believe that story was told to people who were like the older brother, because they were asking Jesus, why are you eating with sinners? And then he says, here's the story, and he's trying to get them to understand how the Father feels towards the things that are lost, those who are lost. But the older brother represented the people he was telling the story to. They needed to see and have compassion that a brother or someone who was lost has come home. And that's what we want. That's what the angels want. It's what the Father wants. If you will believe with all your heart that Jesus is the Son of God, you believe in the sacrifice He made for you, that He died for you. He took your place. He put Himself in your shoes. He died and took the punishment that you deserved. There's no greater example of putting themselves in other shoes than that. And that's what He did. Why wouldn't you want to serve a God like that? Why wouldn't you want to make Him happy? And let Him rejoice. Let us rejoice with you that your sins are forgiven by turning from those sins. Confessing, I believe Jesus Christ is the Son of God. Be baptized. And let all the sins be washed away, and they'll be forgotten and not remembered anymore. And they should not be thrown up into your face. That's not the picture of forgiveness. It's not like, you hold that over you from now on. But once you're forgiven, you're forgiven. And you can now live guilt-free. You can live without regret. Yeah, maybe there's still consequences there, but you can move forward. Forget the things that are behind and press forward. Why not be baptized if you haven't? If you have already, I hope these things have helped you. Let's be there for each other, regardless of your circumstance. However we may help you, won't you come while we stand and as we sing.